All right.
Okay, once again, Michael Beachley, I have no conflicts.
Actually, let me call the meeting to order now that we're recording. I call the meeting to order at 9:30. And welcome everybody. I'm going to review the agenda real quick. And let me get to that. I'm just going to share the screen here. And well, there it is. Has everybody had a chance to find the documents?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to have a busy day. We're going to do I guess I do have the conflict. Oh, I guess on my own, I put review agenda. Then we'll go into the conflict of interest declarations for approval of minutes, my report. I have a few things. And then Sarah Absher is going to join us today, and she's going to give us a statement coming back from our last meeting and giving us some updates. Talk briefly about the Bylaws Committee webpage, very briefly, and then we get to the meat of what we're talking about today, our Bylaws article review. If there are no objections, I'm going to defer Article 5 meetings until the next meeting. We're very full up, and that's one area that Susan and I felt we could defer until the next meeting, correct, Susan? And then we'll review and update the project plan and schedule feedback meetings, which I'll talk about a little bit in my report. So hopefully you guys brought your calendars. Summarize the meetings and action items. And then this time I gave a little more time for public comment. We will try really hard to be done by 11:30. So, all right. So any corrections or changes to the minutes?
I just had a question, Nancy, about Article 4 on the bylaws. Did you change your mind since we talked?
No, I think Bill and I were talking that it's a fairly lengthy and complex article. So what we thought is we would just put that up and discuss it a little bit so that you know what's in it. And then if there's time, if we just really get through the other articles efficiently, we'll go through this one more thoroughly. But otherwise, we'll just kind of introduce you to it and then schedule it for the next meeting. Does that sound okay? Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Bill.
And then on Susan Absher, we've been waiting for this scatter diagram of memberships. Is that?
We're hoping she'll talk about that today. Yeah, Sarah. We're hoping she'll talk about that today. So we'll find out. She was going to try. She's a very busy person, so hopefully she will. But we also have some updates on maps that I think you guys will find interesting too under Article 3. Okay, any other questions on the agenda? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so now, Michael, go for it.
Oh,
conflict of interest.
Well, I've practiced now. Here I go. 3, 2,
Yes.
1. Michael Beachley, no conflicts of interest.
I guess I can just say I'm Nancy Vandell, no conflicts that I'm aware of.
Tom Sipe, no conflicts.
Susan Schomburg, no conflicts that I'm aware of.
Wyatt Angelo, no conflicts.
Bill Miller, no conflicts that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Did you all have a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I sent a very minor non-substantive edit to Michael.
Did you put that in, Michael, or is that a new edit?
It's a new edit. It's dropped the ly out of a word. I'll get it back to you shortly.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Bill. The message is you read them.
Yeah. Okay. Any other corrections to the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, the minutes are corrected except for the editorial change noted. Thank you very much, Michael, for your work on a very complex meeting to take minutes on. Okay, my report. So I just want to thank all of you. We have been working really, really hard. It's been a terrific committee to work with, and I look forward to continuing that work as we're into the meat of the bylaws. So just a quick thank you. I wanted to show you how to, and for our guests that might be new, welcome Jessica Smith. I'm going to share the screen here and go to a different area. Okay. Oh, I have the agenda up. Okay, so if I go back here, I don't think you can see if I go, I'm just not going to do it. If you go to the NCAC website and you go into upcoming events, you will find the bylaws committee in there. And you can get in and see all of our documents. You can see the agenda. There's also a link in there to be able to register for the meeting. So just wanted to let you know. And if you go into the archives section, you can see all of our past documents, our videos, our minutes from all of our meetings. So as well as other NCAC meetings. So I think that is good. I'm going to stop sharing because I turned out I was in the same area. So I wanted to just update you a little bit on our first executive board meeting was held on January 23rd, and I thank the officers for holding that. Welcome, Jeff, and welcome, Mark Shiflett. And I think it was a good first meeting where the officers had a chance to talk about the agenda for the upcoming meeting. Committee chairs had a chance to talk about the committee work, et cetera. And so welcome, Sarah. So I think the officers decided that they would go ahead and have an executive board meeting again next month, which will be not the month with an upcoming board meeting. And so it'll be a good chance to test it out. We appreciate their doing that. Okay, in the February 10th membership meeting that's coming up, the bylaws committee has been given 5 minutes to present. And so we're going to do a very brief overview of some of these articles that we're looking at and present our feedback session dates. So we're going to be setting those later in the meeting today. And I'm getting an echo. Someone's got their speaker on. So on the feedback sessions themselves, I put the scheduling of them at the end after we actually go through our article amendments to see where we are, what we've voted on, et cetera. And I've got a project plan in the files, in the meeting file that we can go through. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, particularly for our guests, that what this is an opportunity for the membership to be able to hear what we're proposing and be able to interact with us in a less formal way than in a meeting. So we'll be presenting, so there'll be anywhere from in most cases, one or part of one article presented at any feedback meeting. There's one that I'm proposing 4 articles be presented that are all very simple articles. We would present those, describe a rationale for any of the changes that we're recommending, and then there'd be member comment, a little more of a dialogue. So we have some discussion with subcommittee members, but mainly it would be for us to attend and listen and answer any questions people have. So I'm hoping the committee can attend all of these. And then I would facilitate. And then for the next session, I realize I'm maybe getting a little ahead of myself, but depending on how the feedback sessions go, we would either have the bylaws go for an adoption and vote at the April general meeting, or there's a possibility we could, depending on what the officers want to do, schedule a special meeting in May to go over the bylaws and have a special meeting just on those. And lastly, there's always the possibility of the June general meeting, but hopefully we might even be able to do it in April. Okay, that's my report. Any questions for me before we get into Sarah's talk? Okay, Thank you all. Sarah, welcome, and appreciate your coming. Thank you for all your support of our committee, and you're on. And I should introduce you. Sarah is, she's unmuting. Sarah is the Director of Community, I'm sorry, I should have this
That's
right here.
okay. Community
I
Development for
have-
Tillamook County.
Thank you. I've got it right on the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Have a couple of things to report out. And I just want to say it's nice to see everyone. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming meeting a week from Saturday, right? We got a meeting here just right around the corner with the NCAC. So a few things to report. I do have numbers for your mapping. Nancy,
Great.
I am going to mail you the hard copy of the map because I don't have a GIS person at the moment. We are in process of working with a contractor to get a new one. So the membership boundary with the highlighted properties actually had to tape paper maps together and do that,
wow.
but it's done. So, but I have some numbers for you today because I think that the
Okay.
numbers will be helpful. Okay. So based on the spreadsheet that Nancy emailed to me, thank you, Nancy, it looks like there are 178 properties that are registered as members for the NCAC.
Let me just
So,
clarify that.
yes.
Those were members that had attended the June meeting. I think there are other properties that are registered, but these were the only ones that were
Attended the June
registered for
meeting.
attended the June meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go off of those numbers then. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
right, Jeff?
So those people wanted to vote in the election in June, so they provided their address when they registered for that meeting. That's where those addresses came from.
Okay. So do we have okay. So that's what we're going to use today then to go off of the basis of just that meeting. If you wanted kind of a snapshot in time of representation throughout the community for who showed up. So we had 178 properties register for that meeting. And I broke it down into areas outside of the community boundary as defined for planning purposes, right? Your zoning, your community plan, etc. And then I did the outer fringes, which includes Sahali, South Beach, etc. And then in the core village area. So outside properties, there were 13. So of those 178, there were 13 properties that registered that day. The bulk of those are off of Slab Creek Road. You had a property that so if they're I think they put in their mailing address perhaps instead of their the property they own address because it came up as Hebo. So I'm assuming that one they own property and just used wherever their other mailing address is. So Slab Creek was the predominant representation. You had a couple off of Aeolian Way. You had one off of Horizon View, which is to the north of you outside of the boundary. And then the Nescowan Valley School registered to vote that day. For areas outside.
Those ones you just went through, those all add up to 13? Is that the 13 you're talking about?
Correct. Those are the 13, Bill. And those are properties identified that are outside of the Nescowan community boundary. There were 107 properties within the central village core. So that includes everything up Hawk Drive to Nescowan North. It includes Hawk Creek Hills, which is directly across from the market. It includes the condos, and it includes all of the properties along Breakers, Hawk Street, etc. So you're looking at Amity, Sheridan, Independence, Yamhill. So there were 107 properties. And then
that doesn't include Nesco North, or is up to Nesco North?
It goes up to Nescoin North. And then Nescoin North, South Beach area, Sahali, those were 59. So, and the majority of those being off of South Beach Road or in that area of those properties where you have to ultimately traverse through South Beach Road to get to Nesco Drive or wherever your property is. So strong representation from the village core. And then next would be the outer fringes of the South Beach area, Nescoin North and Sahali. And then 13 outside of that realm, primarily down Slab Creek Road.
When I add it up, it comes to 179, and you mentioned it's 178.
So it might be, let's see. Did you?
So 13 plus 59 plus 107.
I knew somebody was gonna catch that. That has to be, excuse me, because I caught one outside of the village. So the numbers are 13, 59, and then Susan 106. I had to shift one. Does that
And
work?
how did you pick that? I can't remember what you called it, but directly across the store up the hill.
The Hawk Creek Hills.
How does that be part of the village where Nesco North and South Beach are not? I mean, that seems as remote to me as.
Yeah, and it's due east. If you pull those out, I would pull out probably 5. There were not many up there. It was mostly Fairview, Fairway. Fairway was in there. Let's see. Hilltop. I had a couple for Hilltop. I had a couple for Fairway, and I think maybe one for Summit. And then I had one additional for Schoolhouse Road. So actually, if you did 100 in the village core, then you did 65 in the fringes, and then it would be 13 outside of the community boundary. But I think overall, if you look at the percentages of who came to vote that day, there was the strongest representation was inside the community boundary. And in following the voting process and the votes that have occurred over time, which have typically been a strong majority vote, I mean, I don't recall an instance where the votes had to be counted by hand to verify. I think the representation is there, but you're not looking at a big swing if you look at percentages of demographically where people are voting from.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all that work manually, Sarah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sarah mentioned to me that she had been a cartographer in the county
Past
for
life.
a long time ago.
Yeah. Back
Thank
in
you.
2003.
Well, it's still
And
above and beyond. So thank you very much. That should help
My
us when we
pleasure.
get to Article 3.
Does anybody have an actual, so Jeff, do we have a comprehensive registered list?
All we have is a list of emails. So to my knowledge, my knowledge of the NCAC doesn't go back that far. We never did an exercise where we had people register as members, provide their addresses, and do something that rigorous. We just I think at some point we mailed out postcards and we got a bunch of email addresses that way. But
Which makes sense.
when people show up at the meetings, mostly it's on the honor system that they are eligible members.
So one of the things that we've been doing in Article 3, which we'll be talking about, is actually registering members that with their NESCO and address it, whatever form, whatever qualification that would be, so that we'll have more of that data in the future, hopefully. But
Yeah, I'm
anyway.
curious, Sarah, that you mentioned 178 properties that registered as members, and that's the total of 178. Do we have any breakdown on how many people per property registered to vote? Like, were there 5 people registering for one address?
So that I do not have. The way to get that information would be probably well, let's let Jeff talk first, and then I'll tell you how I think you could get it.
Yes, well, I mean, everyone who registered to attend had to provide an address. So it would not be a hugely, Nancy already has that spreadsheet. It would not be a hugely difficult thing to go through and see what instances are like more than one person is registered at the same address. So
There were a number where there might be 2 separate registrations in the same address, and no more than 2. And then there could be times when we'd have to go back and look at the video probably, but occasionally there might be 2 people going in front of the same computer. I wouldn't know what that is, but I'm just saying maybe off the top of my head, maybe 5 different sets of double addresses.
Well, and I've actually tried to keep track of some of that before, just watching and observing to see who's all showing up. And when people turn their cameras on and off, it's like the Brady
Yeah.
Bunch shuffle and all the squares
Yes.
move, and you can't keep track. It's
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, did you mean to say instead 178 members registered to vote? Or did you mean, as you said earlier, that 178 property addresses registered as members?
That's correct. So if Nancy or whoever had the Excel spreadsheet and collapsed the list, right? Because I got the properties one time in the Excel sheet. So my numbers are not representation of the number of voters. My numbers are the representation of where the properties they represent lie
Okay.
in relation to the boundary of the community.
And so if there were 2 with the same address, then you counted those as 2 properties, right? Or
I
one
counted
property.
everything once because
Once,
I did not see the only duplicate addresses, Nancy, that I thought that I saw were for the condos, because like breakers, everybody has the
Oh.
same address off of 101, and then it's a different unit.
Okay.
And so I did count those.
If a husband and wife shared the same address, how did you count that? And they both voted.
I just counted properties. I did not count ownership.
So basically we have a minimum number and it's likely to be somewhat larger than that.
Right.
In terms of actual people.
Right. But if you wanted to know just representation wise, where were the properties of the people who were voting that day? Because there's a lot of conversation about membership boundary and who's representing what and who's where. This tells you the concentration of representation is in the village core.
And once
And I
we
think for
actually
purposes of
do
this
a
map, that's what we wanna
registration,
know.
right? And so I
Yeah.
think once we do the registrations in the future, hopefully we'll have more sample sizes to be able to put that in. But thank you, Sarah, very much. Bill?
Um, another question, I was gonna say last question. So you said the concentration is in the village, but that's just by gross number. Do you have any feel for, is that a bigger or smaller percentage of the eligible property, or I guess the properties it would be in, say, North and South Nesquin? How many, half of those there, or 3/4 of the village people there, or, was it more heavily represented per capita, I guess, or per property?
Well, I guess Bill, I guess the best way for me to answer that is you had 100 properties that were between the condos to Nesco and North. So out of 178, you had 100 properties there
that registered.
that registered. So well over half.
But how many properties are there in that area? Are there 500 properties?
Oh, okay. So that's a great question. That's my question too. And I was thinking about that. I would like to know what the number of tax lots are in Nescoin and the number of tax lots in the membership boundary. So as soon as we hire a GIS person, Bill, I want that data too. So yeah, that's we're in negotiations for a contract now. So
Okay.
yeah.
I struggled to get that question out, but I'm glad it was a great one at the end.
Yeah. No, I'm tracking you. Yes, I would love to know too, out of 500 properties, 100 right? Yeah, is it 20%? Because you're looking then at participation percentages too, just overall in interest, which I think would be very valuable. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you. We need to move on. Sarah, did you have anything else for your report? And
Sure, I do. I have two things to share today. So part of what my role is to keep the commissioners and county council informed on the work that the CACs are doing. Because I am the liaison and the conduit for those updates and communication. That's something I do regularly, something I've been doing for a long time. There were two things that I visited about recently with the county commissioners and county council. The one is the discussion of the bylaws committee exploring proposals for adjustments to the CAC membership boundary. And the other thing is the voter eligibility. So I've had an opportunity to talk to the commissioners individually as well as county council and wanted to bring back some updates today. The expectation of the county commissioners is that the CAC in and of itself will remain inclusive and that the membership boundary will reflect and continue to reflect that inclusivity. There is strong concern with processes already underway, like the community plan updates, that the membership boundary could change in the middle of that process, not allowing people who have already been a part of that process as it began to continue to participate at the level they have been. So I am not telling you what you have to do today or what you can't do today, but what I'm sharing with you is the expectation that in the spirit of Goal 1, which is the citizen involvement, and the premise and the basis for which the CACs were formed, that the membership boundary and the process remain inclusive. The second piece of conversation was related to the voting. The commissioners strongly feel and would expect that the voting process also would remain inclusive and not discriminate. And that was a word that actually came up in the conversations with a few of the folks that I visited with. The precedent set by the CACs over time, and this would be all of them, is that there has been consistency in eligibility of voting across the communities and the CACs. This has been the eligibility establishments as pretty much they are currently written, with an opportunity for each member to have one vote. So the expectation again is that the voting process will remain inclusive, democratic, and not discriminatory.
Can I ask for some clarification on that?
Sure.
Our sticking point currently in our discussions has been if you have somebody who is not a resident, actually a party, a set of people who are not resident, but have ownership of a property. Say there's, in one particular case, there's 12 owners of a single property. Our conundrum was, is that 12 votes or is that one vote?
or is it two or
Some
three?
number in between.
Right. So the way that all of the voting processes for all of the CACs have been set up is that any person that meets the eligibility that includes ownership interest would have
Ownership interest.
one vote. So if you own multiple properties, you don't get to vote multiple times. It's a membership thing of you are a stakeholder, you have an interest because you meet the eligibility requirements of either resident, owner, business operator, that you get one vote.
Okay, just to clarify, if there was a consortium of 50 people who owned one piece of property, there are 50 votes.
That is correct. Now, obviously, that's not the case.
Well, I mean, we have a case that is 12.
Well, yes, you do. Yes.
And
So
each of the 12 could end up having anywhere from 1 to 4 people.
Yeah, so
in
we're talking
like a
about maybe
trust or
100 votes.
something.
mhm. So
for one
because,
property.
so it would be not the family, it would be the person who has ownership interest based on title of the property, right?
Okay, so that'd be 12 then,
Mhm.
I guess. I don't, well, people can own, there are 12 deeds to this particular land, and
Right.
pardon me, Michael, I'm using.
I've
as
seen all the U accounts in the assessor's office. I remember.
Okay,
I
so
know what
we
you're
got-
talking about. Yeah.
So we have, there might possibly be joint ownership of a 12th of the land, which would be 2 votes there. Would that be correct?
Correct. So if a husband and wife are both on the deed, they have ownership interest in the property, they would both vote. If
Okay.
one of them owned the property and the other one didn't have that ownership interest, there would be one vote. But to your point, if let's say my husband and I owned a piece, or my husband owns a piece of property in Nescoen, we live there. I'm not on the deed because I have property elsewhere, right? But we live there. He's the only owner on the deed. But because we both reside there, I still qualify as a member because I hit the resident button.
Yeah, of course.
That's
Yeah,
good.
the only, you know, this is a set of qualifications, and if you
Mhm.
qualify in one area, you're qualified. And we're just now discussing whether or
Mhm.
not, you know, the quintessential question is, are there 12 or more votes for this one particular piece of property? And what I hear you say is there are. That's the feeling of the county, that multiple owners should have more votes than people who live here.
I'm saying for equity and not to discriminate between how this has already been formed and the consistency across the CACs. If you are eligible because you own property, you reside there, that you get a vote. Without
Okay,
splitting hairs of fractional ownership interest, it is just to simplify it. That is what it has been.
Hmm.
If you want to talk about max number of votes per property, I might be able to bring that forward. But again, this process is intended to be inclusive. The CAC is
Yeah.
intended to be inclusive.
Yeah, I
So
understand
I see
inclusivity.
you, Wyatt. I want to just point out real fast that since Michael's name was actually brought into it, that Michael has been very democratic about this and has actually brought this forward himself, and you know, has said that they're more than willing to appoint one or more representatives from their group. So just to defend Michael a little bit here,
Mhm.
Wyatt. And then
Yeah,
Mike.
Sarah, there are all sorts of forms of derivative ownership of property, which is going to be the devil's in the details situation. And I can think of a number of them that that principle doesn't address.
Mhm.
One of which is, for instance, a partnership of 5 people who own a single lot. And the partnership, the title is in the partnership. It's not in the individuals.
Mhm.
And so does the partnership get one vote, or are there 5 people who get the vote? Or if and I guess the question is whether the commissioners have given any guidance, or the county council has given any guidance about that. And the other one is, like, Weyerhaeuser has 3 million shareholders, and they own property, a lot of property within what
Mhm.
might be the district boundary. And so
Mhm.
where does one draw the line here, if we've got any guidance at all?
Sure. So I would say that to date, the strong feeling of reforming or reconsidering voter eligibility has not come up in any of the other CACs. It has been, there's a registration process, but it's been an honor system. It's been, it's been more of the goal of we want people to participate. We want them to have a voice. And I don't think any of the other CACs have experienced a sense of abuse or misguidance or misalignment in that voting process.
Sarah
So,
and I had a
There's two separate
conversation.
issues there though, Sarah.
Bill, Bill, can you hang on one second? I think it would help.
Michael.
Sarah and I had talked a few days ago, and could you talk a little bit about the philosophy, Sarah, of the Board of the County Commissioners and the county about what the CAC is all about,
Sure.
and voting versus getting participation and that kind of thing.
So thank you, Nancy. So the CACs were formed because in unincorporated communities, it was recognized that each of our communities were unique. And it was my predecessor, Vic Affolter, who formed the CACs. That this is not a requirement of state law. This is not a requirement of anything. It was him and his passion to want to see unincorporated communities have an organized voice to be able to come forward together and participate primarily in land use matters. And this actually goes back even to like Canry Hill, 20, 30 years ago, because that was a huge area of interest. We've always known that, every once in a while a planned, destination resort proposal comes in. And so the idea was if these community groups were formed, it would be a way to collectively hear from the communities how they felt about certain land use applications or issues that the boards desire. And so that, it's intended to be inclusive. The votes matter, but it's the voice and the participation that matters more. I mean, just to be honest, voting is important because it represents the majority and minority of how a CAC may feel about something. But what's more important is what was the numbers of participation behind that? Was there inclusivity? Was it a transparent process? Did everybody feel like that's a stakeholder and a community member? Were you heard? And then with that, behind that, which I will tell you, I've been especially planning. I've been a planner for over 15 years. What matters is the reason behind the vote. It's one thing to say we support it, we don't, we like it, we don't, but why? And so the reports that reflect the vote are what matter the most. What were the concerns? What were the issues? Why did you like it? And I'll be honest with you. I mean, part of me, it's the vote is important, but it's the voice. It's the voice of why it's important that we are looking for when we're soliciting feedback and in the throes of making a decision or recommending a decision to either the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners. And my hope is that once this process is done, wherever it lands, that the vote is not the focus. It's the reasons behind the vote that are the focus for both the minority and the majority on any matter.
Okay.
And that's what Vic intended. That's what the CACs were intended to be.
I appreciate that. And then, of course, the only other area where voting matters is in electing officers or committee chairs or that
That's
kind
right.
of thing. And that's where it can matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because that is a yes or no. But I'm very concerned about the time and energy that's going into this process of voting. What are you voting for? And is it the numbers that matter, or is it the reasons behind the vote that matter?
And one thing that I've learned through this process is that there is a part in the meetings, Article 5 in the meetings that Susan and I were talking about, where there is a minority report and a majority report that is expected if there's a contentious vote. So there are mechanisms in place, plus any individual can go to the county, correct, and provide their input. So
That's
there are all
right.
sorts of different ways to provide input. Bill, I kind of cut you off. What did you still want to talk to it? And you're on mic and you're muted.
Well, I understand, Sarah, that you don't want us to focus on the vote, but that is one of the provisions of the bylaws that we have to
Mhm.
resolve. And I see it, and I think others do, as clearly different from participation. I haven't heard people on the committee express negativity about being completely inclusive as far as participation goes. But I know a number of us have strong feelings about the voting. And I suppose one of the issues is the
Mhm.
possibility of tinkering with the voting by going out and sort of getting as many votes as you can from properties that happen to have multiple votes, and the other is just getting a skewed vote, and the last is just sort of on general principles. So I see them as different issues, and the participatory thing would be completely in line with the commissioners. And if you just say one property, one vote, I don't see that as eliminating the chance to participate. And the report, like you say, would reflect what went into that.
Mhm.
Susan?
I was wondering if, Sarah, if you might be able to tell us how, I noticed on the TillamookCounty.gov website, there's a Nesquin community map. How does that play in and what is it used for?
Mhm. Thank you, Susan. So you went to Tillamook County, and are you on this?
I can put that on the screen if you
Please
like.
do,
I'm
Tom.
gonna let you share. Here you go, Tom.
And then I think Michael too also had a question.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see your hand, Michael.
Where's it? I don't see the share. Okay.
Well, he's finding
Okay, there
that.
it goes.
Oh,
There we
oh, you
go.
got it? Okay.
Okay. So now the question was,
Okay.
that's,
Yep. So
And at the
then,
top left, it said
Uh-huh.
CPAC, Nesquin CPAC area. That appears on the TillamookCounty.gov site. So I'm curious what that
Oh.
means too.
yeah, so this is, okay, so this is the GIS layer that we are currently contracting for someone to help us manage this and keep this updated. So the aqua blue is the community boundary of Nesquin. So everything in that aqua blue is the state adopted and acknowledged community boundary. So that is where you see all of your unique zoning districts within that boundary as well, right? Because Nescowen, the community itself, has its own unique set of zoning districts that do not apply anywhere else in Tillamook County.
and I could turn on the zoning districts.
Yep.
That way.
So, and again, the requirement to create these unique zoning districts does not exist. This is not required by state law. All of the unincorporated communities until the CACs and the community boundaries were formed had a very generic, so this is all, 14 communities, a community residential 1, community residential 2, residential 3, and a community commercial. Neoconi, Pacific City, you all had the same zoning designations. Again, Vic, in his efforts to really showcase and honor the uniqueness of each of our unincorporated communities, embarked on that endeavor. Some of you were a part of that, to create these unique zoning districts with the adopted community boundaries for the unincorporated communities. So Susan, that's what you see.
So
So if
when
you
it
zoom in
says
on
on the TillamookCounty.gov website, the title of this map is Nesquin CPAC area.
Yeah.
can this map boundary be changed? Why is this boundary significant for the county?
Mhm.
Should it be included? Should it be included in our bylaws?
So I believe it could be. I mean, it's described in your zoning districts and in your community plan. And the short answer is it cannot be changed. The
I
community
noticed-
boundary cannot be changed because the
Okay.
land use laws will not support it. And you
Okay.
would have to incorporate if you wanted to change it.
I noticed the other unincorporated communities in Tillamook County all include the CPAC area maps from the tillamookcounty.gov website.
So the CPAC is the CAC. They used to be called Citizen Planning Advisory Committees when Vic initially formed them with the commissioners. I think it was 2013 or 2014. There was an updated board order and the planning word was eliminated just to call them CACs. But you'll hear some communities, they still call it a CPAC. It's the same thing. It's just, some folks were in at the beginning and that's what stuck in their mind.
So will Tillamook County rename this map on the tillamookcounty.gov website to Nescoin CAC area boundary?
So it's the Nescoin community boundary. Yes. Short answer is yes. What I will say is because the staff person who has done this work initially was out of the assessor's office, it's just a communication thing of saying, hey, it's actually a CAC and it's the Nescoin community boundary. But this GIS layer, this mapping product that we're all using, actually is for tax and assessment purposes. So they control it. They've identified and labeled things the way they want. The zoning districts and the boundaries are correct.
Let me just clarify though, that boundary is not necessarily what the boundary of the CAC would be, right? We could have a larger boundary.
The membership boundary. You have the community boundary and the membership boundary.
Right. So I just wanna make
So
sure
you're
that-
saying that the Nescoin CPAC area boundary would be equivalent to Nescoin CAC area boundary for the county's
membership.
purpose, for the county's purpose, for
what
land use and zoning and all that?
So for land use and zoning, we focus on the community boundary, which is
what's
not,
on the map.
it's
the
the aqua. The
Okay.
aqua. The aqua, that is what the aqua is, right? So if you take off the zoning, if you take off and then, hit the unincorporated community layer that Tom just hit, the aqua is the community boundary for land use and zoning purposes.
And both of these colors, right?
The aqua, the green that's underneath of that, I think is just shaded because of the lighter and the topography coloration.
Okay,
The
Be really nice
membership
if we could-
boundary can be anything.
thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna, Michael, you had your hand up and then I think we need to move on or we're never gonna get to the other things, but.
Yeah, since my name came up a couple of times, let me weigh in. I have two perspectives on the voting issue. Everything that Sarah has said, I think is important to understand, for me anyway. And that is that the overriding purpose for the CAC is to provide input as to what this community feels and thinks to the County Board of Commissioners. This is not a policy-making body, and so we're not doing policy except only amongst ourselves as an organization. And I am trying to fathom what a vote really might be that would be so contentious as to be discriminating between one group of people and another group of people. And I can imagine the possibility exists. For example, short-term rental issues might very well be a very contentious issue for those people who own property, and a lot of people own the property but don't live here, and trying to influence the community against the community's favor, in the favor of business and so on. And so I can certainly see that. Makes a lot of sense to me. And so and in my own case, we do have 12 separate deeds. And they are not relying in any way on each other. And we could buy and sell those deeds. But my fairness part of me says that, well, you have membership based on residency. That's one class. Move that class out. You have membership based on employment. That's another class. Set that aside. But that third class of property owning seems to me that the most reasonable thing is to have one or two, I would suggest two, votes per property, with no person, regardless of class, having more than one vote. That is, you can't have more than one vote because you own more than one property, etc. But that two is reasonable, and it not only provides adequate, more than adequate access to speak, to make your points be known, to be heard, to be represented, but it also has an opportunity to vote, and I think that's eminently reasonable. Now, as far as the county is soft on that, or not really, not really behind that notion that one vote, one person, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't sound to me to be a real hard and fast rule, but that they might be interested in a lesser limitation of, let's say, maximum two per property, regardless of how many do own the ownership. It's a funny thing, because everybody gets uptight and rightfully so, absolutely rightfully so, about voting limitations. This is a democracy, and it's very, very fundamental to who we are as a people. So I understand that, and I honor that. At the same time, I think reason and rationality and equity need to come through on this particular one. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there a, sorry, Nancy, I can
No,
stop
you're fine.
talking. I just,
No,
just,
please. This is
thank
actually
you.
going to be a core part of Article 3 when we get there. And so we're kind of dealing with Article 3 right now, but it's important. So thank you.
So is there a concern? So I'm hearing a couple of things. I'm hearing, that voting could be used to, so I'll use the LLC example, or Michael, I appreciate everything you just said. Thank you. But just the idea of an example of a property that has a dozen owners. Is the concern that the residents of the community feel that their opinions will be outweighed and overrun, especially if it's a targeted issue, that the voice of the residents will be lost by being overrun by a majority vote of people who may or may not consistently participate, but jump in because of something like the STRs.
So that is,
Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct?
I think on principle, absolutely.
Okay, and Bill's shaking
People,
his head no.
the people who live here really do have a greater interest, whether legal or real or otherwise. It's certainly recognized by themselves. In our particular situation, we meet quarterly at least as a group, and
You mean the CAC or the
no,
residents?
no. I'm talking about my particular group, the 12 people in this property. We meet regularly as a group to make decisions and so on and so forth, as it would a board of directors would come together and do that sort of thing. But none of them have any interest in voting. I mean, they want to know what's going on. They want a report, and they ask me on a regular basis, tell me, what's going on there? What's the issue? And okay, go back, vote, and if you can, carry what we feel is important, etc. But they don't want to vote. Now that's the reality. So you've got principle and you've got reality, and they're not really quite the same. But we have to be aware of principle. Reality comes and goes all the time. But we have to be aware of principle and formulate that in the bylaws so that everybody understands there's an equitable access to decision making, and that they have a part in it.
so Sarah, I'd like to also answer, we are getting some feedback from people who are residents that feel like people who live there should have at least an equal, if not more of a say than people who are strictly property owners. So in terms of the county, you know, I think property owners may or may not agree, but property owners feel like they need to be represented because their property interests are at stake. But I think, you know, we're going to be getting hopefully soon into the proposal that Tom and Wyatt are going to bring forward, but it's a really key area. And I think when you bring up STRs, I think probably the controversy over the past year over STRs has caused more of the concerns that we're seeing than we might have otherwise seen it. Maybe why you're not seeing it in the other CACs. So we just feel like by wrestling with this now, it's going to be hopefully coming out with something that's going to be fair and equitable that the members are going to care about. So I think looking historically at the number of people who've been attending meetings, if we had a limit of 2 per property or 1 per property, definitely 2 seems to be something that would be a max, that would be fine. I think the proposal is going to be for 1, but I haven't heard any concern about limiting it beyond that, beyond 1 or 2. So I don't know if the county would entertain that possibility but it seems like if we're going to consider that, this would be the time. And what I would suggest is if you think that there's a possibility that they would, if we could go into the feedback sessions with a proposal and hear what our members that come to the feedback sessions have to say and other methods of public comment, we hopefully would have more information to take to the county. And what we will be doing as we go through our articles, just for people who are guests here as part of our process, is that as we go through the different articles, we have 1 or 2 people who are committee members who've gotten together to come up with a proposal, and then the full committee listens and discusses the proposal in these meetings. So that we're following Oregon public meeting law. But then we'll be going into, you know, member feedback and comments. And then based on that, we would possibly be revising our proposals that we would then take to the membership and to the county. So before we get into the county, we would submit everything to the county before we actually go into a vote of the membership. And if we end up, if you're telling us we really need to not have any limits, then we'll do that. But if you're telling us that the county might entertain the possibility of having limits on how many property owners can be designated, then we might be recommending that. So I don't know that I'm being very clear here. And are you
No.
going to be able to stay the whole meeting so that when we get
I
to
am.
Article 3, we could revisit this? Okay.
Yep.
So if that's the case, I'd like to just stop this discussion because it will resume at Article 3. Is that okay?
Or you want to go into Article 3 or 2 first?
I'm going to go to 2, but I want to defer. I
Yeah.
want to defer this discussion
okay,
until we
sorry.
get to 3.
And
So
is Sarah,
Sarah,
will Sarah be at the meeting still?
yes, Sarah just
Yes.
said she will be. So
Yep.
thank you, Sarah.
Here
So
for
did you
the
have
long
anything
haul.
else for your report that you'd like to present?
No, not at this time. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And again, we really, really appreciate it because this saves us so much time and effort to know what the county is thinking and what we can do and to hear the background on why we're here. So, okay, let's move on. We're to the webpage. I'm just going to say really quick on the webpage. I'm putting together a draft language for the webpage to kind of iterate what our process is and have links to our different documents and that kind of thing that you could find on the homepage. And Jeff has been just great at saying he will work with me on getting that done. What I plan to do is do a draft and then send it to each of the committee members and to Sarah and to the officers individually for comment. And then we can discuss it again at our next meeting so that we can have a web page. Right now, we have a tremendous amount of stuff on the web page, on the website. And thank you, Jeff, for managing all that for us. So, you know, you can find all the documents. If you go to the NCAC webpage, you can go into the records section and go into
Did you just
archive
go quiet, Nancy?
and find us. What's that, Bill? Bill? I didn't hear what you said. Bill, can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you, Nancy.
Okay, okay, I thought Bill said something. Anyway, so you can find everything now, but this will just make it a little bit nicer talking about what our process is and everything. Okay, so enough on web. Bylaws article review. Let's start with Article 2, object. And I'm going to share the screen, and this is Bill and Tom. Article 2. Try to get it bigger. Okay. And Bill and Tom, take it away. This is a new, we haven't presented this before, so.
Okay, so we've made actually very little changes to this. I don't know if it would be easier for me to drive it or you. I've got it.
Why don't I let you do that? Also, while Tom's doing that, I just want to welcome Mark Everett, our NCAC chair, and Jeff, our secretary, NCAC secretary, and then our guests, Sheila Clark, Roger Wickland, Jessica Smith, Mark Shiflett, Hillary, and Lori Kovac. So thank you all for being here. I may be
I
missing.
will someday get used to Zoom being recalcitrant. When you make a selection, it should just do it rather than say, do it. Do you really want to do that? Yes, I really want to do that. Okay. Okay, so basically very little change here. And this is our standard boilerplate. And this is fundamental to defining why we're all here. One of the changes that I flagged was that the way that the sentence originally read is that the NCAC was providing advice to citizens. And I'm pretty sure that's not what we're meant to do. We only provide opinions to governments. So we're not really advising citizens. So that's the reason for that strikeout. Any questions on that? Anybody object to that change?
So I'm just going to ask here I know we just go into public comment, but those of you who are guests, if anyone sees a reason why this would be a problem, please speak up. Okay, so, okay, thank you, Tom. I think you can move
Okay,
forward.
got the next one.
Mhm.
Just to clarifying,
The next slide's not up, Tom.
I've gotten to the next slide. Perhaps you haven't been
I see
updated
it.
yet.
Bill, are you looking at the Zoom screen?
Yes.
Can everybody slide?
I'm on page
the
4
two?
or slide 4.
I'm still seeing the one with "and citizens" struck out. Do other people see something different? Oh, all right. Mine's not working for some reason. So go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so change here is just minor editorial, but in the sense of full disclosure, we just clarified that as needed to, rather than we're going to continually harangue the county. And anybody object to that?
Sounds good.
And that's basically all there is.
Tom, on page 4, did you get my note about that?
Oh, yes, you wanted to have clarification on
Well, I don't know what that
advocating
means.
for consideration of county services. I think that's just legalese.
So what does it mean?
Oh, that means basically that we can't dictate, but we can ask. That's a fancy word for ask.
But I don't, for considerate, so give me an example. How would we be asking for consideration of county services? Like getting the
So
roads paved or something?
this is the current language, right?
Yeah, the
Yes.
current language. And county services, Sarah could probably tell us better than I, which things are county services and which are others. Sarah, do you have an example of county services?
Oh, oh, oh.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. Hi, am I there? Okay, I was clicking buttons and nothing was unmuting. Yes, thank you. So county services would be public works, sheriff's office, government, planning, building, community health. So those are all county services.
Well,
Your,
what
Does
would
that-
we just, I mean, are we just saying advocating for county services?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
I don't know.
that's what I'm saying. This is kind of legalistic. We don't have to,
emergency preparedness.
if we deleted what was in consideration of, I believe it would say the same thing.
Any objection to that?
I will,
I think, as a semanticist, I understand what Bill is asking. I think, and that is that advocating for county services puts us in the position of advocating for the county, whereas advocating for consideration puts us in the position of asking the county. Is that fair, Bill?
I suppose so.
So there is a difference between the two of those.
Or you could say advocating for county services on behalf of members.
um,
And
it kind of says that up here. I mean, I really don't care. But either way. So what's the sense? I am of the school that if we don't have to change something, we shouldn't.
that's fine.
If it's this is a gotta change, I'm okay with
No.
it.
I'm sort of in favor of leaving consideration as part of it.
Okay. Fair enough. We can,
Consideration is probably in there because when the board is getting ready to take action, it's discussion and consideration of. So that is their action word. So that might be why that was in there initially, if that helps.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on Article 2? Are we ready to take a vote, or do we want to think about it and come back to it next meeting?
Well, I think we should vote.
So make a motion, somebody.
I move that we approve this Article 2 section as drafted and amended.
I
Second,
second it.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to recommend approval to the membership of, and to the county of Article 2 as presented with the amendments noted. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Bill and Tom, for your work on Article 2.
Okay.
We have another one. All right,
Yeah.
so now right into Article 3.
Okay, so anybody
That's some
object to
good
approving this
changes.
as written? No, sorry, that's probably too soon. I was humor there, by the way. 'Cause sometimes I have to identify that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Please note the revision number on this.
Revision 15. We've had a lot of machinations and in fact, I've had a lot of learning. I now appreciate the community much better than I did before. So this has been real good for me. Once again, we have the boilerplate. Just to note that we re-added a little bit about voting back into this because it seemed to fit, but not all of the procedural stuff for voting. Okay, so I was doing some live edits as we were discussing this, and what I heard from Sarah was that maybe the one in the one authorized representative isn't going to fly. Question for us is, first of all, give people a minute to, membership is open to all persons who identify as a member of the Nesquin community or at least 18 years of age or old, have at least one of the following qualifications. So it's anybody who is any one of those 4 bullets has a vote. A resident, 1, originally was 1, or the -1 version said 1 authorized version of of an owner, or 1 authorized representative of a beneficial interest, or 1 representative of a business owner. And any individual qualifies for membership that meets one of those criteria, 1 or more of those criteria, has 1 vote regardless of the qualifying thing. So the question is, do we want to push back? Do you want to run
I've got something I think that is important to talk about while Sarah is still present. One of the realities, and I think Michael hit the nail on the head here, is that we have to satisfy a majority of the membership to approve the bylaws. We have received a significant amount of feedback about restrictions on membership/voting and concerns about the fact that voting could be skewed by virtue of multiple owners of property, et cetera. I think we are in a position where we probably are going to need to make some restriction on how many owners of a property can be voters. Whether they could be members or not is a whole other ballgame. But it seems to me that if the county is not concerned about the actual vote, but more concerned about the input, they shouldn't really be concerned about having some reasonable restriction. And Sarah, maybe you could address that issue because you raised it. It seems to me that if the county is looking for viewpoints and feedback, they're going to get that based upon participation, whether the vote is by 3,000 people or by 300 people.
Thank you, Wyatt. So yeah, I can appreciate what you just said. Again, the intent is inclusivity. All stakeholders have a voice. All stakeholders are able to participate, and that the voting, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to use Michael's words, should be fair and equitable to all members. What I think the challenge is, and yes, the reasons behind the vote, a vote will tell you what the majority is, but it doesn't tell you why, right? I think where I see the challenge in what you're trying to do, and I appreciate what you're trying to do because this is not easy, is there's 2 comments that I hear consistently. One is that residents have a greater interest, or that there is a feeling that residents are the most impacted, therefore there should be some sort of weight or deference given to them and or their vote. But there's still the acknowledgement of a fair and equitable voting process. And if you're truly going to be fair and equitable, who is that to? Is it just to the residents, or are you talking about everyone who has a stake and an interest in the community? So I don't know how you balance those and find that space where you can do both if there's deference built to the conversation.
One comment that we heard last meeting of the bylaws committee was that, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly, but basically people who live here, if we had been incorporated, would be the only people who would have a voice. Having people who don't live here have a voice is actually an expansion of who participates in the process.
Mhm.
So, and that to me was quite telling.
Yeah. You would also have a city council, right? So
Yeah.
you would only have a small group of people making those voting decisions versus the community as a whole.
Directly, yes.
That's a good point, though, Tom.
Mhm.
Michael?
Yeah, that is a good point. Except that in an incorporated area, there is no tie to land ownership. It is simply residency. Somebody
Yeah.
who lives here, they vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges here. I think that in terms of representation that's fair and equitable, people who live here, people who are residents should be heard in terms of voting, period. People who have property ownership should be heard as well. Now, the issue is not for me as a communications guy. The issue is not so much voting. The issue for me is my ability to stand up and speak and to be heard. The fact is that regardless of the number of votes, we're going to be heard. Now, one way to balance it all out, I'm not really sure how to do this yet, Nancy, but one way to balance it out is to include in the bylaws a provision for a majority minority report
Mhm.
on reports that go forward to the county.
And we do have that, Michael.
Do
We
we?
do have that under meetings.
it's already there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. But then I think that all of our bases are covered there. It's equitable in that everybody can speak. There is a majority minority vote, a report that balances and holds on. And every individual who's a participant in public debate and discussion is limited only by their ability to speak well. And that's it.
So I think where the voting comes in is it does give still, you may have people who have opinions but don't want to speak. And of course, that would be their prerogative, but also in elections and that kind of thing. So I think it's important to get this nailed down. Just a show of hands of the committee, I realize, because what we're doing here is we're going to be presenting whatever comes out of this into feedback sessions and getting input from the community, right? But just a quick show of hands, how many people feel like what's on the screen would be the way to go with the one not struck out, with one, basically any resident of Nescoin could be in there, would be a member, one authorized representative of real property owners, and one, all of the ones in there, and only one vote per person, no matter how many categories they're in or how many properties they own.
Could I offer an amendment to that vote?
Okay,
I'm
not asking for a motion.
No,
I'm just a quick show.
I understand, but just in terms of the sense, I can live with several different things.
Mhm.
So I could live with essentially any of the decisions personally. So I don't know if I should vote for all of them or vote for none of them.
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to ask a series of questions, and we'll just see where it's falling out on.
Oh, okay.
And you can
Fair
vote
enough.
to any
Sorry.
or all. It's not really a vote. It's just a show of hands among the committee members.
Okay.
How many would could support the proposed thing on the screen?
With the
Are you
one included,
suggesting it is one changing to any authorized representative of a real property owner, or is it still
Yeah.
one
The
authorized?
first
Let me-
question
let
I'm
me-
asking, is just the thing on the screen with one, just as if it had not been crossed out. The
Okay,
original.
so essentially
So
that
how
way.
many, and then I'm going to ask other questions. So Wyatt can support that, Michael can support that, Tom can support that, okay, and Bill can support that, okay. How many could support instead of keeping any resident and then having two on the others? Two authorized representatives, how many can support that? Okay, Wyatt, yes. Michael, Susan, Bill, can you support having two property representatives? No. So I'm seeing 4 and 4 basically of different people. Do we want to go to any higher number? Or do we, well, the current one is no limit, right? It's any of those categories. How many could support having the current bylaws, which don't itemize it like this, but basically it's this, not making a change where we have no limits on the property owners. How many could support that? Susan, Tom, and not Bill or Wyatt or Michael. Okay. So thank you. That's helpful just as a, so I think what I'm going to recommend is that we go into the feedback meetings with what's presented with the one and get a sense of what the community feels in our feedback meeting. Does that sound fair? And Sarah, do you feel like if we did that and we came back to the county and either one or two would be a sense of fairness from our community discussions, do you feel like the county council and the county commissioners might support that? Or do you think we're going through an exercise of futility?
Thank you, Nancy. No, I definitely think it's worth going to the feedback sessions and getting that. I think you're going to want that before you bring a proposal to the membership for a vote anyway. With that, again, I think the test for council and the commissioners is going to be, does it remain fair and equitable? Is it inclusive? Is it consistent with what the expectation is for the CAC? And I would say that the last piece is, can you manage that? Can you track that in a transparent way?
Right. And so that's kind of a question for Jeff a little bit. Jeff, if we had people registering to vote and they put in which of these different categories they might be registering as a member, and we had, say, 5 people from the same property who were not residents appear in a meeting, is that something that would even be practical? Or if we're on the honor system, does it even really matter if we emphasize honor system? Would it even matter that much?
So this is an idea I had just during this meeting, but I think it's a good one. I think if we are going to go down the path of less honor system and more checking, like having a list of members who are registered and like we have their address and we know who lives at what address. That should be paired with a new standing committee, which is the membership committee, whose job is to basically just keep those records, because the secretary does not want that job.
Right. So could it be something that would be one of the communications coordinator jobs that we would be discussing later in officers?
Sorry, what was that?
Could it be considered one of the communications coordinator positions?
I think it should be a full committee where there's more than one person who does it, and where the like review is in a public meeting, because that that wants to be really transparent. So and maybe that committee only meets once a year, but like I think it shouldn't just be on one person, because it's very sensitive, and and that person could be erasing records and stuff like that. Like
that's a great idea.
So if we're gonna, because that's a lot of work, that's probably as much work as we're doing now, just to kind of like maintain. Well, maybe it's not that much work, but it is an annual or like kind of big exercise of many hours of going through the list and like checking things off, and how do you renew membership? Like what happens every year? Does everyone have to renew every year? Like all those questions open up, and they're all work. So so like if we add those rules, we also need to add a explicit like group, like people who are going to do the work. So
or we err on the side of honor system. I see your hand, Susan, just a moment. Okay, so thank you. I think too, because of the importance of this and the next slide, which is boundary, I think we would actually have to put in a really carefully written justification for any of this with alternatives to when we submit to the county and to the membership. Susan?
Just a quick technical question for Jeff. Are you able to control who the poll goes to for voting? And do you know the people voting are actually qualified to vote if we dial this down? Do you know who votes for what?
So Zoom polls, at least at the level we have, don't tell you who voted individually. So we would probably need a different voting mechanism. Because we're also opening that can of worms. Is that like after the meeting starts, you have to go through and check who's there and like who's a member, who's not a member. Do we kick people who are not members out? I don't think so. But then so we would have to come up with a whole different way of voting so that probably with say a Google form or something like that, where it was only open to a registered list of people, and we sent out the votes ahead of time. So it would also limit. It would make it much more harder to have ad hoc votes during the meeting. So yeah, just going down this path of being much more rigorous and not going by the honor system, like it gets really complicated really fast.
And then if there are nominations from the floor, if the if the ballots are sent out ahead of time, how can that then reflect nominations from the floor?
Off the top of my head, I don't have a solution for that. I don't know that there is no solution. We might be able to figure it out, but yeah, that is just really adding a lot of complication.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's something we're going to have to look at.
This is going off the rails.
Just a minute,
here.
Tom, just a minute. So I think on this practical level thing, it's a big deal. And I think when we get into more of the discussion with the community, I think part of this could be just handled through the honor system. I mean, we're going to have to look at this as a committee, maybe under policies and procedures even. Is this going to be something where we really put all this effort into making sure that people are legitimately voting, or do we just go ahead and say, well, we'll put in this system of registering as a member based on whatever is decided here, but in terms of actual implementation, it might just be honor system. I don't know.
I like that better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you can't marry the two.
Now?
Yes, you may, Tom. Thank you.
This is no change other than putting some restrictions on what we already have. We're running on the honor system. We should continue to run. We're not cops. We should not get into that business. If somebody cares enough to impersonate somebody who lives here, well, okay, I'll live with it.
Yeah. I kind of agree.
We don't want to set up an infrastructure that's going to be complicated. Then I'm not going to volunteer for the member committee. I guarantee you.
I think you got a lot of support there, Tom.
Okay, fair enough. I'll stop. I'll shut up now.
Good. Thank you.
Actually, I won't
Okay,
shut up if we go to
so
the next slide.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
next slide.
So next slide. This is yet another map. And I listened to the discussion several times of our last meeting, and the charter for the original CAC was actually set at the river boundary. And I interpreted that as a upper northern boundary, but if you look at the map, that's what the map is. And it's down to, their intent was to be down to the county line. So that was the original, it was a bit woolly, but it was essentially that area. That pretty much encompasses the Tillamook precinct named Nesquin. And I thought it would be really easy if we said, if you live in Nesquin precinct, you could be a member. Yeah, there's a lot of trees out here that are probably not going to vote. That was humor again, sorry. But if we look at the map, which is what I can find, and if we look at the zoning, there's not a lot of people live out here. These are basically forested areas. These are the areas where people live. But for simplicity, but there may be some, cabin in the woods. I don't know. But that's going to be a small number of people. It's not going to have a large impact on any voting. So
And-
go ahead.
And just for everybody's information, Bill Bush last time suggested that we use the zip code. And I looked up the zip code, and it's very consistent with the voting precinct. And probably the voting precinct is an easier unit to manage because who knows what the post office will do with the zip code down the road.
Yeah,
So
they could split a zip code or
exactly.
combine.
So this seemed to be the best alternative.
Any comments, Susan?
Yeah, so I have a question because early on in this recorded call, I asked Sarah about the TillamookCounty.gov map for the Nesquin CPAC area. And she said it's the same as the NCAC area. So I'm here, we've got the NCAC area.
Susan, I'm sorry, I have confused you. The aqua is the community boundary. And that's what the assessor's office mislabeled was it should say Nescoin community boundary. It should not say CPAC. Right, so that's when I was talking about a mislabel. This, for purposes of the community boundary, it's not the CPAC, it's the Nescoin community boundary.
So the county has made the mistake on all the unincorporated community maps, because every map on the TillamookCounty.gov website, whether it's Pacific City Woods, they call them CPAC areas.
So that is something that I need to talk to the county assessor about because they have done that and controlled that. It's their communities. It's just a mislabel because whoever the staff person that did that did not understand. So
Okay, 'cause
it's the aqua is the community boundary,
Community boundary,
not the CAC boundary.
Okay. So for
Sorry,
context,
Susan.
so for context, this is exactly where I got the map. It does have the voting precinct there, and so that's the difference. So back to this.
And I think it's really helpful, Tom, when you showed where people resided. And I think that falls a lot. I was listening carefully to Sarah. It sounds like Sarah, from the people who attended the June meeting, it sounds like they fall into this boundary, correct? You don't see anything in your mapping that would have fallen outside of that boundary. Right?
So as far as Tom's boundary, river to county line, they were all inside except for that Hebo address. So I'm assuming that person has ownership interest. The majority, so of the 178 with the community boundary, as Susan and I were visiting about, in the community boundary, out of the 178 properties, all but 13 were within the community boundary.
Mhm.
All but 13.
Okay.
All but 13 were in that aqua area.
And as we've heard from quite a bit of input from, I think the majority were Slap Creek Road people, but whatever, so they've been part of Slap Creek Road. I mean, part of the community for a long time. They still are very involved with the community, and they've been members and leaders in some cases. So, so this would basically protect the existing membership, but rather than having us try to cut people out.
And let me once again give the disclaimer that the original very restrictive boundaries were a product of my ignorance of not understanding what was meant by what was written down, as opposed to what was written down.
So what that does,
which is a good case for changing
to say, this clarifies, right? So.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know. So, and thank you, Tom and Wyatt, for all your work to understand that, and to the committee, because when I've talked individually with people and in discussions in this meeting, I think, and input from the county, is that we're not trying to be excluding people. So, okay, thank you. You want to move on? I think we're getting close here. I think the rest of it's.
These have been discussed before, and I don't think unless someone's changed their mind on it, membership. But for Sarah's, basically we have a mechanism for establishing membership, so that we can track them, so we can answer the questions that we asked earlier. So we can identify our members and communicate with them.
So let me just check, Tom, because the drafts change. Is any of this new from the current
No.
bylaws wording?
Okay, this is about 7 or 8 iterations old. I don't track everything that's changed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to read it.
I understand, but well, we could
I
go back
believe
to
this
the
is, I
bottom.
believe this is new out of whole cloth. I don't believe there's anything
Okay.
that was in the old one. Just to saying what a member is, and here's how you establish membership.
Okay.
That was absent. So is that going to be a problem, do you think, Sarah? We just want people to register so we know who they are, so we can answer the
Yeah.
questions that we've been asking. I
Yep.
think it's pretty benign.
Yeah,
Did-
They
no,
might be
I would
able
agree
to-
with that.
They might be able to do that like once a year, or if they're a new member.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
see any reason for expiration particularly.
We could put that in the policies and procedures on how that's implemented.
Yeah, that's a detail thing. And this is as it was. That's no change other than some editorial fixing of sentences. There is the last section on media registration, which kind of doesn't belong here, but I propose to move it after we get done changes, because there's just too many things going on if we start moving things around too much. This is essentially what was there, just slightly reworded. There's no new stuff here. Let me know when I can proceed.
So I think, so Susan, we would bring that over to our Article 5 for meetings. So Michael?
Yeah, just a short one on the previous slide. Tom, can you go back one? Excuse me, I'm sorry. On the previous slide, Tom, can you go back one?
I
He
have,
did.
Okay.
I'm on slide 7. Is that the one you want?
I would switch to each member with on the website. That could be misinterpreted as being each member who actually exists on the website. So I would put shall be available on the website to each member. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering if we just strike the to
Just
each
take it
member.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure, take
Take
it
it
out. Yep, good idea, good idea. So simple.
Okay. Because that's what we're doing anyway.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Nobody, anyone objects? Okay. And anybody objects to this? This is essentially what was there before. And last slide is just the definitions that we'd come up with. And then we're going to move those off to Article 10, just for those of us who are really paranoid about things. So we'll have some definitions on what they are for people who care.
So like
But we're
Article
gonna
10
move
will
off to the
include a
end.
general glossary,
Yeah.
correct?
It'll be in a definition section if we have any other definitions. So
Okay, so how do you all feel about this? Do you want to, I'm kind of feeling like we've discussed it there. I'm getting any objections to the new map from the committee?
the new map. Okay.
Mhm.
I would like to see a bigger map so that I can dial in and see if Cascade Head, Three Rocks Road, Old Nescoin Highway. I don't know geographically how this overlays an actual Google map.
You have, there's a link on that slide that gets you right here. And I don't know, and there's Nesquin, or there's Tillamook County.
Uh-huh.
And then as let me go ahead and put in, What would be interesting? I'm not sure what the unincorporated communities and okay, so what more would you want? Susan?
Well, I can't tell looking at this on my screen right now. Is Cascade Head Ranch included in this?
If it goes to the county line, Susan, it is.
And it does go to the county line.
Then
is-
yes.
So North
But
Three
you-
Rocks Road on the backside of
Oh,
Cascade
oh,
Head,
okay.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, Three Rocks. That's what I would.
or
missed.
the other Three Rocks on the other side of the 101? Is that, the old?
Yeah, this area here.
Right. You can see, so it's actually also, you can see where Three Rocks Road is, and it even includes part of, what is it, J Savage Road, because there's a small area of that that's clipped into Tillamook County as well. This includes Sitka Center, Grass Mountain, all of those places would be included with the boundary at the county line for membership.
And that's not a change. We believe we are not changing the boundaries.
Mhm.
We're just defining the boundaries.
Mhm. And where you can see Cascade Head is see that salmon color down there at the very
Yep.
northwest corner. That's Cascade Head. That's where Sitka is. Because of I can tell because of the zoning designation pulls that out. Everything you see in green is zoned forest.
Okay, there's
So-
Three Rocks Road now. I can see
Yep.
Three Rocks
Yep.
Road. What
So
about the far right side that's red?
So that's Sitka.
No,
You mean
further
over here?
along on this, further along in the corner, that it almost looks like it's
Oh, so that
that
is a
red corridor.
Yeah, that is a stretch, I believe, of rural residential. Hang on, I'm going to my zoning map here on my internal stuff. Let's see. Let me look at that. What is that zone?
That is a single property.
Yep. And it's zoned recreation natural. So it's along the Salmon River Highway.
So is it part of the old scenic highway? Because I'm only seeing a little stretch of it. Like if you go the back way,
Yeah, I
down
think
past the Nesquin Valley School, how does it looks like it's missing a portion of the old scenic highway? Is that in a different county?
it's in a
This
different
is-
county.
Yeah, this is 18 here.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's only showing
That's
me
18.
that
That's
segment
18.
It's
I thought
18.
that was the old scenic highway.
No. I think that is,
Whatever Salmon River Highway is that Highway
that Salmon
18?
River Highway is 18.
Yeah, so that's what it is. It's Highway 18.
And I believe what is the old scenic highway is actually turns into Slab Creek Road there.
Which is where your mouse is.
So this really goes east of the old scenic highway. Is this part of north of Otis then?
This is north of Otis over here.
No, I mean the far right, the red
Far right.
zone.
No.
If you
That's-
said it's 18,
Right.
Okay, this is a single property along the river
Mhm.
and 18.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt because we're running out of time here.
Yep.
So I was hoping we might be able to take a quick vote, but I think there are enough questions that I'm going to let committee members individually go to Tom and Wyatt to get answers made. Look at the presentation. I think, Tom, you'll probably do a little update. Figure out whether you're comfortable with one or two. I do get the sense that people are not comfortable with not having a limit on property owners. And let's revisit it and hopefully we can dispose of it quickly at our next meeting. Does that sound fair?
yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
I have a hard stop a half hour from now. So
Yeah, that's why I'm stopping us. So we
Okay.
are going to defer
post-
the officers section, but please look in the look at these, all of these, because there's been a lot of work that's gone into Article 4 and Article 6 executive boards. I was hoping we could actually vote on today, but we'll just defer that. And Article 7 subcommittees we'll bring up next time. But I think this has been a really valuable use of the time. I think this has been a key article for us to, and I think we've made tremendous progress today. And then Susan and I will bring back Article 5. So hopefully we can talk individually and figure out and take a vote on Article 3 next time. But I'm hearing some degree of some consensus, plus we'll be able to hear public comment a little bit later on too. But we do need to move on and review and update the project plans. So let me go into sharing the screen, and basically what that is when we get back into here it is. Out of that, bring up our scheduling. So as you can see, I got rid of the comments section. I've hidden a couple of columns that aren't really that critical right now, and added status and feedback session dates. So what I'm proposing, it looks like if we could take Articles 1, 2, 8, and 9 and put them together in one feedback session. They're all really easy. One's the name, one's the object that we just voted on today, one's parliamentary authority, and one's amending the bylaws. I think we could do those in one feedback session. If we look at the rest, if we have one for, two meetings, 2 to 3 meetings for members, and then have one for officers, one for meetings, one for executive boards, one for subcommittees, and one for other, it means somewhere between 8 and 9 meetings. And if we want to try to have everything done before the April general meeting, that means doing 1 to 2 a week. And I'm suggesting scheduling a 2-hour meeting. Hopefully we wouldn't have to take 2 hours, but that would allow us to have adequate time. We've been asked to have these meetings on evenings or weekends so that members who work can come and participate. And I would like to have it done when we can, as many of us as possible can participate, so that we can all be hearing this feedback. It will be on video, so you don't actually have to be there. Well, we will be recording these feedback sessions, but as a staff. So I'm going to ask how many people can do evenings. And I realize there's certain evenings you're going to be able to do and not do. So is there anyone who cannot do evenings? Okay. How many people could do Saturday mornings? Bill, where are you?
I can at some point, but I don't know. It's a basketball
What point?
schedule driven.
Okay. How about Saturday afternoons?
That would be better.
That would be better. Okay. Okay, so why don't we schedule a few on Saturday afternoons, and then I know somebody had told me they can't do Monday nights. How many can do Tuesday nights in general?
General, I
Or how
cannot.
many cannot? Let me ask it the other way. How many cannot do Tuesday nights? Okay. How many cannot do Wednesday nights? Okay. How many cannot do Thursday nights? And I guess we won't try on Friday nights, although I've found in the past sometimes people like Friday nights. How many cannot do Friday nights? Let's just throw that out. Okay, so we've got a pretty good schedule. So I think if we schedule the very first one for these 4, I'm just going to bring my calendar up. Why don't we start with a Wednesday night? How about if we start with a Saturday afternoon of Saturday the 17th? Need to move my calendar over so I can see for the first one. So let's say 2 o'clock, 2 to 4 on Saturday the 17th for those first 4 articles. How does that sound?
Works.
Okay, anyone that does not work for?
I'm taking care of my grandson that day, and I've got the day blocked out for a basketball tournament. I haven't seen the schedule yet, so I just don't know. I can't tell you.
Okay, all right.
What day,
So
Nancy? I'm so
yeah.
sorry. What day did you say?
the February 17th.
So I will be in Pacific City. There's a Pacific City CAC meeting
Okay.
that day.
So how about Friday the 16th in the evening from 7 to 9?
That's the same day we have a meeting in the morning.
Yes, it is.
The
We'll be ready
16th,
for it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's, the morning meeting is not good for me on the 16th. I shared with you why.
Right.
Yeah.
I could
In
do
terms
the
of-
afternoon on the 17th.
You could do what? Afternoon on
The
the
afternoon. Mhm.
Okay. I can't, but um let's see. Okay, what about Thursday? Okay, so
It seems unlikely you're going to get everybody for all these meetings.
no, I think that's right. So
And I will also just say, are we really scheduling 2-hour meetings? I mean,
yes,
I can't believe people are going to.
yes. You've
Yeah,
heard the
and
comments
do it
just
all.
between us, among us, and I think this is an opportunity for people to be able to speak. So, Bill, they may not take 2 hours and you don't have to stay 2 hours, but I want to have it on the agenda as 2 hours so that people aren't feeling rushed for time. You know, they're restricted to pay public comment here. And so if we don't take, it may be that we'll get 3 people for this first one and they speak in 5 minutes and it's over. But if it's something like the membership meeting, or it turns out people care about the section 4 with officers or whatever, I want them to have the opportunity to be able to speak. So that, and whoever can stay as long as, you know, they can do that. So,
They
all
will
right.
be recorded.
And they will be recorded. Everything will be open. So, okay, well, let's just go into the next week. So how about Wednesday, February 21st in the evening, 7 to 9? Okay, no objections? Okay, I'm not going to assign what we're going to do when. I'm just going to get dates where people can make it. So 221 is 1. Okay, and then how about that Saturday afternoon, the 24th? Could we do that from 2 to 4, or would people prefer like a 1 to 3? How many would prefer 1 to 3? How many would prefer 2 to 4? Okay, let's do.
I have no preference.
Thank you. That's what I'm getting. Let's do 2 to 4. Okay, on the 24th. All right. How about the next week? We do Wednesday night, the 28th, from 7 to 9. Any objections? Okay, we're making.
I won't be available then.
Okay.
I'll be out of town.
How about Thursday, the 29th, from 7 to 9?
I'm going to be out of
Any
town that rest of that week.
Okay, so I'll schedule something that maybe, hopefully you're not too concerned with. So why don't we do the February 28th from 7 to 9? And then how about Saturday? Are you gonna be back by Saturday, Bill?
No, I'll be up at Mount Hood for the whole through Monday there.
Okay, so you might possibly be able to even come in for part of that
I-
from Mount Hood?
Well, I don't think so. I'll be skiing all day and with my family, and then going to the
Sounds
hot tub and then
fun.
going to dinner and you know,
We'll just all be there with you on Mount Hood. Okay.
Yeah, sounds fun.
So, okay, then Saturday, March 2nd in the afternoon. Any objections besides Bill?
What time?
2 to 4.
Okay.
Okay, so 3, 2. So we've got 220. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 more. Wednesday, or excuse me, how about Thursday, the 7th, March 7th, from 7 to 9? Any objections? Okay. How about
Oh, wait,
Saturday?
that's in the evening?
Yes.
March 7th?
Yes.
I'm sorry to be such a pain in the neck here. I've got tickets to play.
Okay, how about
I
the
can't be
8th?
two places at once.
You can't. I would agree with you there. How about March? Well, what about March 6th? I have oh no, I've got 2 conflicts. How about March 8th? Friday night. Any objection? Okay, so we'll do Friday night, March 8th from 7 to 9. And then we just won't do a Saturday that week. And then how about on Thursday, March 14th?
I might have a hearing that night, Nancy.
Okay, how about, well, I'll just skip that one. March, let's see, some people couldn't make Mondays and Tuesdays, right?
Just Mondays for me, Nancy.
Okay, what about Tuesdays? Was
Those
somebody
work.
said they couldn't do Tuesdays? Oh, I'm not hearing a Tuesday. How about Tuesday, the 12th? Any objections to Tuesday, the 12th?
I
That
don't have an
works.
objection. I just got something from my daughter. She's coming in from DC, and I don't have her schedule here, but it was sometime that week. So I'll have to look that up.
Okay,
Um,
well, why don't we say Tuesday, March 12th? And then on Saturday, the 16th, March 16th at 2. How's that?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Just as long as it's something that doesn't involve me, that's fine. But I won't make be able to make Tuesdays.
Oh, okay, so you were the one. I thought there was
Yeah.
one. Okay, well, let's just.
Yeah, I
scrap
put
Tuesday
myself
the
on
12th.
mute so I could cough and peace.
I think you need to be there, Tom, so
Okay.
all of them.
so Tuesday, the 12th, what time was that one?
We're going to strike that.
Oh.
So we're going back to the drawing board on that. So 3. If there are no objections, I'm going to extend the meeting for another 15 minutes, so we have public comment. Okay. So Wednesday, the 13th, were there any problems with that besides me?
Just that issue I told you about my daughter and her airplane schedule.
Right. So let's do the 13th, 3:13, and then I heard no objections to 3:16, correct?
What time on the 13th?
All of them would be 7 to 9 for the evening for the weeknight ones, and all of them would be 2 to 4 for the Saturday ones.
Okay, and I'm
And
sorry,
Sarah,
what did
you
you say
can
after
do all
the
these, right?
13th? What was the next one you said?
The Saturday, 3:16 from 2 to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we have the next week. What about Wednesday, the 20th in the evening? Any objections? Okay. And Saturday, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And one more if we need it for Saturday, the 23rd. Any objections? 2 to 4? Okay, I think we've got it going. And Susan, I can't see you or hear you, so I'm hoping everything's okay with you.
Yeah, everything's okay. I just had to plug in. I was at 10% on my iPad, so I
Okay,
apologize.
No problem. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sarah, will you be able to join us for some of these or all of these?
So yes, my plan is to make them all. I have them all on my calendar. If a conflict comes up, I'll let you know.
Okay, that would be terrific. Okay, thank you. So we have our meeting schedule set.
Which
If there
puts
are no
some pressure on
objections,
us
we
to
have an
actually get
agreement.
done.
What's that, Tom?
Which puts some pressures to be actually done by the time
It
we have the meeting.
does. It does. And I'm going to populate these with, if you have no objections, I'm going to populate them myself on who we, on which of these articles go in which date based on opportunity to go. Does that sound okay?
Yeah,
And the nice thing about Tom's format here of being in PowerPoint is we can do some presentation on it. But I do want to go through with each of you who have originated these documents, including some of them myself, and put in a little bit more on why we're recommending. So as we start these meetings, we'll be able to say why we're recommending this or that and what alternatives we might have considered and rejected that we'll present before we have the comment. And then we can have people all discuss, because there'll be people who haven't attended these meetings there. So thank you. If there are no objections, I will go ahead and do that. And I'll send that out for drafts to you, and you can tell me to each of you individually, you can tell me if you have any concerns with any of them. But I think because the first one doesn't start till the 21st, it'll be after our next meeting, so we can also go after it on our meeting on the 17th. So to wrap up, we went ahead and approved Article 2. We've made a lot of progress on Article 3. And thank you, Sarah, for all your input. I think it's been really helpful. And we will go ahead and publish these feedback meetings when we present at the general meeting on the 10th. So you all are invited to attend the meeting on the 10th if you would like. We'll have a very short presentation where we've been given 5 minutes. So I think that'll be good. I'm now going to, so in terms of action items, please read the reports that are on our website for these article things if you haven't actually done them, so that and contact the people that drafted them ahead of time if you can, to ask any questions so we can move through it at our next meeting. And I think that's it.
When you say the reports, you mean the drafts that they put up?
Exactly. Thank you, Bill. Yes, the drafts. Okay, so we're moving on to public comment. Thank you all for being so patient with us. I'm going to stop the share.
You're going to
And
send
for
out
any-
these meeting dates, right?
I am.
Yeah.
And Michael will be catching them in the minutes, but I will also send them out with, and I'll put which things are going to be in which area. So we welcome all of you, Mark and Jeff, Roger, Mark Shiflett, and Hillary and Lori, who would like to speak. Jeff.
You're muted.
Okay, I know I have 3 minutes. I have 3 comments. I'm gonna try and be concise. On the map, I've shared my thoughts on this with Tom and Nancy, but I'm gonna share them publicly until I get a sense for whether there are other people that agree with me. My belief is that the goal should be that the district boundary should not change via the process, just be better defined. And like when I look at the current district boundary, I don't see Cascade Head Ranch in it. I don't see any part of 22 in it, and I don't see any part of Highway 18 in it, and or Redbird Road. So I'm just being fast, but I think if the goal is like everyone should see the new boundary and say that's exactly the same as the old boundary, that we were not currently meeting that goal, and I think that I think you're going for clarity and simplicity of definition. It's just the voting precinct or the zip code, but my personal feeling is that even if we're in practice, we may not add any new members. Like, just it's easier and less controversial if it looks exactly the same and the exact same people look at that map and say I'm inside. So that's my 2 cents. On registering members with the secretary, unless we unless that is solving a problem and we have a purpose there, I don't think that makes sense. Like having a list where we don't expire people is just going to end up with a giant mess. So I would say, let's not do that unless we have a good reason for it. Not just it sort of sounds like a good idea, but like we're going to take that list and use it for this purpose. If we don't have that purpose, let's not put that in the bylaws. We can always add it later or put it in the policies and procedures. And from all the way back at the beginning, the discussion of members versus or residents versus non-residents, and do residents have kind of a greater stake or whatever. I think that's just a decision that has to be made, and I think that decision was already made, which is that the purpose of the NCAC is as Sarah was saying, is to be as inclusive as possible. It's not a substitute for a city council or something. It's just everyone who has is related to Nescoin in some way can come there and share their views and have a vote. And I understand why some people might be going like, hey, well, I want something else, but I think that's what the NCAC is, and I don't see any real vector or reason to change that. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Just a quick clarification question back on your first statement. Are you saying that you feel like the boundaries that are being proposed would have more area than the current boundaries are?
Yes, I feel like so if people want to look at this map and say, yes, that is Nescoin, if the Van Duzer Forest Corridor is in there, and maybe there's no actual addresses in there, I don't know, but why have the question? So if pieces of Highway 22 and pieces of Highway 18 and Redbird Road are all in there, and most people who are part of the NCAC don't think of that as Nescoin, maybe that's the wrong map. Maybe there's a better way to define the map that both matches what people think of as Nescoin and is a good mapping of the current language in the current bylaws of Cannery Hill to Slab Creek Road. So
okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your keeping it under the 3 minutes. And by the way, Hillary, thank you for suggestion in the chat last time for that. We've added it. Okay, who would else like to comment? Anybody? Hillary, hi.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate. I'm glad to hear the 3 minutes. I actually wrote my comment down today so that I would be sure to get it in 3 minutes. So I just wanted to thank you guys for your really hard work on the bylaws. I can tell that the committee is really well run, and you guys are definitely bringing your A game, trying to get everything ironed out. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to say I support 1 vote per property. I think that's the most fair and equitable way to handle voting. And quite honestly, the repeated suggestion that property owners who do not currently live in Nescoin would not be entitled to equal voting is divisive of our community. So Nescoin is actually defined by Tillamook County as a resort area due to the very high percentage of seasonal homeowners. So living full-time in Nescoin is a privilege that we don't all have. And input from non-residents should carry equal weight to input from residents. So we all love Nescoin, whether we live there or not, so our votes should carry equal weight. And then I can support a more inclusive boundary with the caveat that any voting on official recommendations to the county, which are limited to impacting only within the official community boundary, that voting should be limited to property owners within that boundary. And then owners outside of the community boundary can have a voice, just not a vote on those issues if they only apply to the area within the community boundary. And then all official recommendations to the county should also require a quorum of all eligible property owners, and voter participation should be encouraged by allowing voting electronically, like outside of meeting times. And that's all my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I may follow up with you on some of that. So thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Roger?
Yeah, again, thank you for letting us give public comments. I have to agree with Hillary. Since the official community boundary is established and cannot be changed, and since the most important thing that the CAC does is look at a land right issue and zoning. I can't think of anything less democratic, as I said, than allowing people who live outside of that boundary to either make plans or vote on issues confined to that boundary. And I agree with Hillary. I think that you could have a two-tiered system in which people can be members of the NCAC, but not necessarily be able to vote on issues that pertain only to the official boundary. I can see if a ordinance is passed on the advice of the NCAC under the current situations, it would seem that that could be challenged immediately because what I consider to be a very undemocratic process. I wish it wasn't so. I think I say that without any animosity to people that live outside the boundary. It's just that this is the official boundary, and that's we have to live with that. I also agree with Hillary. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 70% of the properties within the Nesquin community boundary are actually owned by part-time owners. And certainly, I do not think that permanent residents should have any advantage over part-time owners. As a matter of fact, they already do because they're able to vote within Tillamook County, which is something I think a lot of part-time residents would really love to be able to do, but cannot because they're living outside the community and still employed. I also have one little quick observation. I thought it was really interesting on the data that almost all of the people that voted in the last election live in the urban boundaries of Nesquin. You didn't see many people from Sahali Shores, Hills of Nesquin. I didn't even see many properties included where I live. And I think many of us who are within the Nesquin community boundary would prefer not to be. And it would be interesting to find out how many people actually within this huge boundary would not like to be included, because really the land use issues of the urban part of the village are so different from the ones that the rest of us share within this boundary, which is often a very rural area. And it's just an observation. I know that won't probably change because Sarah's made it clear that we can't change the boundary. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, Roger. And,
Nancy, may I make one just
please.
to help? Okay. So the biggest benefit, there's two benefits that, well, if you want to call them benefits, other people may not agree with that, but just in the land use realm, the two biggest benefits of being in the boundary are urbanization, right? So you're not limited to 2-acre or 10-acre properties with one house, and you get access to sewer or community wastewater treatment systems. If you're outside of a boundary, you don't get things like sewer. So there's definitely an advantage to staying in, especially because you got a house on your property. But appreciate what you said, Roger. Just if that helps, that's why we don't want to shrink the boundary.
Well, one person's advantage is another person's disadvantage.
It's true.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Roger, and I'm sure you will come to our feedback sessions too, and we welcome your comments every time. Thank you. Okay, any other comments from anyone? All right, I want to thank you all for coming. We will see many of you at the meeting on the 10th, and our next meeting is on the 17th, and meeting adjourned. Thanks so much. I will now stop recording.